Welcome to the hardest Assembly Committee on Government Affairs. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Present.
Assemblyman De Silva.
Here.
Assemblywoman Duran. Assemblywoman Gonzalez. Assemblyman Gurr. Assemblyman Hibbets. Assemblyman Koenig. Assemblyman MacArthur. Assemblyman Nguyen. Assemblywoman Taylor. Assemblywoman Thomas. Chair Torres.
Welcome to the audience here in Carson City and those joining us by video conference in Las Vegas in what looks to be a very packed room, and those listening over the internet. Just a couple housekeeping items. Please remember to silence your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door and provide a business card to the committee secretary. For those joining online, please be sure to mute your microphone when you are not speaking to minimize any background noise. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name, spell your name, and state your affiliation, if any, for the record. Then turn the microphone off each time you're done speaking. Handouts should have already been provided to the committee secretaries. Electronic copies should have been submitted to our committee manager by noon yesterday for members of the committee. We expect courtesy and respect in our interactions during the meeting, even if we may not agree with another person's position. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. Public comment will be taken at the end of the meeting. Each person will be limited to 2 minutes. In addition, the public may submit written testimony to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. I think we have a lot of stories in today's committee, but today we're going to go ahead and open the hearing on AB 143, which revises provisions governing counties. And I'll invite Minority Leader and once someone MacArthur is done chatting over there, you may begin.
Chair, I apologize. I'm having flashbacks to the 07-09 legislature when I testified as a division chief, and Mr. MacArthur regularly grilled me and took great joy in it. So I hope we all enjoy this testimony today, and I'm worried about what's going to happen next. But with that said, Chair, may I say good morning on a rainy morning now to Chair Torres and members of the Assembly Government Affairs Committee. It's truly an honor to be here in front of you. This is one of the first times I've actually testified or presented in this committee. I am Assemblyman P.K. O'Neill, and I represent Assembly District 40, which includes all of Carson City, parts of Washoe County, and all of Story County. And I'm here today to introduce to you Assembly Bill AB 143. The purpose of this legislation is to allow the transfer of lands from the federal government to Story County. Should the legislation pass, Story County will receive land transfers of approximately 1,200 acres from the federal government for the purpose of removing a cloud over the title of property. Story County will be legally permitted to convey real property to anybody with an interest in that property without considerations, or in short, for free. Current law requires consideration for such property transfers by NRS 241.281, only authorizes county to sell or lease such property. This legislation empowers counties with an additional development tool and recognizes that local government knows best when it comes to best practices. Today with me to assist in this endeavor, we have Story County Manager Austin Osborne and Story County District Attorney Keith Loomis here. They'll be happy to present the bill to you in detail. Additionally, there has been a friendly amendment which I think has just gotten up to Nellis. It was delivered last night, and I'm not sure it's posted or not yet, but it has to do with the change of effective date, moving the effective date. It currently reads in the bill, upon passage, it would be moved to October 31st of 2023 to allow the county and registrars to be ready for this action. And with that, Chair, I would like to hand it over to Mr. Osborne with your permission.
Yes, and I'll just confirm that it has been posted on Nellis.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairwoman Torres and Vice Chair Duran and members of this committee. My name is Austin Osborne. I'm the Story County Manager. With me today also is our Deputy District Attorney, Keith Loomis, as well as our Assessor, Janice Seddon. We're going to co-present portions of this bill respective to our areas of expertise. We thank Assembly O'Neill for sponsoring this committee for its consideration of AB 143. So I'd like to provide you a little bit of background leading to where we are here today. And Mr. Loomis is going to talk about the legalities of the bill and talk about the structure of the bill. So in the early 1900s, like a lot of mining towns that you see throughout the western United States, Virginia City and Gold Hill were created on federal land without patent. What that means is they didn't get the land privatized first before they created a town site. They just stuck the town site on federal land and called it good. And we're all still living there today with this situation. It's just one of the fun things about living in Virginia City and Gold Hill. So this is a very typical situation. And today, because of this, there remains clouded title on everybody's homes and businesses, including myself, in town. So when you get a nice home mortgage, your deed is going to have an actual thing on there that says, we cover you, this house is, yours, except for any federal government potential ownership. If the federal government comes and says, we want your house, it might happen. We might give it away. We're not quite sure. That hasn't happened, fortunately. And when you get title insurance for your homes or your businesses, your title company, most title companies won't touch that community. You can't get anybody. And when you do get the one or the two that will, then they'll come in, they'll do a title search. They know that there's clouded title. The federal government still claims ownership to this land. So there's just tremendous disclaimers in your title insurance that says, we'll cover you if Joe Smith says he owns your land, but if the federal government comes and has a conflict, we're out of it. We're not going to mess with you. So this is a real problem. People a lot of times will lose home loans. They won't be able to buy properties. There's issues because of this. So fortunately, after 20 years working in Washington, D.C., we were able to get a lands bill. And we had worked with them, and this lands bill really was just for the purpose of Virginia City and Gold Hill, for the purpose of removing clouded titles on people's properties throughout these communities. It wasn't based on economic development, mining, agriculture. It didn't have a lot of exterior land that would provide opportunities for, future whatever. It just was really for the purpose of kind of the core areas of these communities getting this problem solved. And in 2018, through Public Law 113-291, we were able to get the lands bill. It actually came to us as an act. And the federal government at this point on approximately 1,200 acres of land in Virginia City and Gold Hill, roughly 1,100 people were affected. There's about 600 dwellings involved, homes, and about 200 businesses. The federal government said, we are going to quit claim this. We no longer have interest in it anymore. It's now deeded over in that manner. It actually is not a transfer of title over like an actual deed. It's just a quit claim. But nevertheless, we believe that through two houses of Congress and the President of the United States that this quitclaim holds some merit and hopefully can get this clouded title removed from these properties. So how that worked is the quitclaim was given over to Story County as one big parcel, and then Story County then quitclaims it over to properties throughout Virginia City and Gold Hill. Pretty simple it sounds. But there's an issue that Mr. Loomis is going to talk about with the Nevada rules on how you get that quitclaimed back to these private residences and businesses. So that's why we are here today. And I want to emphasize this. At no time does Story County actually have ownership of these people's properties. It's just the federal government quitclaims it to us. They don't have interest anymore. We're trying to quitclaim it over to these people's so we say we don't have interest anymore, and at that point, that clouded title will be removed. I just want to make one note that Story County is okay with Washoe County's request for this to be on October 31st in action. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Loomis from the DA's office. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Keith Loomis, Deputy District Attorney in Story County. What I wanted to do was go through the sections of the bill just to explain what it is that we're trying to get accomplished. And the heart of this bill is really Section 1, which says that the Board of County Commissioners may convey a real property without consideration. I mean, we're not going to charge for it. We don't have to go through an appraisal process. We don't have to go through an auction or any other type of process. We're just entitled to convey the property directly to the owners, people that have an interest in a property within an area of that's been quitclaimed to the county. So it says, if we do convey the real property, the board must execute and record a deed, which is going to be a single deed, which will be recorded with the recorder's office, and it will encompass all of the properties. We are then to send notice, and this deed is going to be effective upon recordation. Typically, in order for a deed to be effective, you deliver it to the person who's going to be receiving the property, and they have to accept it. Now, if we went through and tried to get acceptances from everybody in the county that's within the area of the federal lands bill, that could pose a real problem. So what this does is it kind of reverses that and says that the deed is effective upon recordation. Now, we're supposed to give notice to the people that are going to be affected by this deed by certified mail and advise them that if they don't want to accept the deed, we'll explain to them how they can disclaim their interest in the property and then record that. So it's kind of reverses the usual way of handling something like this. So instead of they accept it and then it becomes effective, this becomes effective upon recordation but can be subject to reversal if they want to disclaim their interest. That's Section 1. Section 2 accepts the process from the requirements in Chapter 244 that require that the county first have the value of the property appraised. There's a process by which we go through selecting an appraiser, and we're not going to do that in this case. We're not going to have the property appraised. This authorizes us not to have to do that. The second part of this, or Section 3 of this bill, makes a similar exception to the 244.281, which says, okay, so you've got a property appraised. If you had to have the property appraised, then this is how you have to sell it. You can go through an auction, you can go through a real estate agent or other one. This bill will say you don't have to do that either. It's just deeds effective upon recordation. Section 4 of the bill is an amendment to 371.047, which that is the government services tax. That's the chapter that authorizes the imposition of a government services tax, which says that if you're going to use a vehicle on a public highway, you're going to pay a percentage of the value of the vehicle to, in this case, DMV, or if the county adopts it, would be to the county. I'm not exactly sure why this is in here, but what it says is that if the local government wants to purchase real property, residential real property, abutting a limited use highway, we can do that. And then after we get that, we can sell it according to the provisions of Chapter 244 if we purchase it. But in this case, we're not purchasing the property from the federal government. They're deeding it to us as a quitclaim without charge. So this might be something the LCB would want to check on, but I'm not sure why that's in there. The last section is Section 5, which amends NRS 375.090, which is the transfer tax, the real property transfer tax. And this creates an exception from the requirement to make that payment if it conforms with the requirements of Section 1, in that it's been given to the county by the federal government, and we are in turn going to give it to the citizens affected by the property that's been transferred to the county. And there will be no requirement that a transfer tax be paid. Now, a lot of these people already paid a transfer tax when they first acquired the property, and so there's not really a purpose to be served by the county then requiring another payment of the transfer tax in this particular case. And so those are the provisions of the bill that are essentially before you today. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Just before we dive into questions, and I had the opportunity to meet with stakeholders yesterday to talk a little bit about the background. And the way I understand it, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to make sure that the history is kind of on the record and that the committee members kind of understand what that history is. In the early 1900s, when these town sites were built, my understanding is that it was built on federal land, and that there was essentially no permission. I mean, it's the wild, wild west of Nevada, in Virginia City and Gold Hill. But in 2018, Congress and the president transferred that land then back to the county. Once that land was transferred back to the county, now we can transfer it back to the private landowners. And so my understanding of this bill is that this would help allow for that. Is that correct? Can you just?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I think that'll help us out before we go into questions. So members, any questions? Assemblyman Taylor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Mr. Leader. Just a question about how many, and I know we had a chance to have a brief conversation, but I feel up to speed. It was very clear when I read it about how many property owners or business owners or parcels of land. I'm just curious. Estimate. Any idea?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Jana Seddon, Seddon, Story County Assessor. There's about 1,227 parcels that are in this Land Spill Act. And among those, there's about 614 improved parcels. Out of those improved, about 582 dwellings are going to be in that.
So this is what, if I may follow up, Chair? Thank you. So this really is, but all of the 1,200 and some change, this does this for all 1,200 of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. You gave me some details, but you went a little deeper than I thought, so, but thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And just quickly, I remember during the presentation, there was a request for more information regarding the intent of Section 4. The intent of we did consult with legal and we received information that it's used to indicate the placement of Section 1 in their NRS. So it's just language to make sure that it's clear in the NRS. Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of the 1,200 acres, are the individuals that have an interest in the property, quote unquote, are they all known to the county?
I would say that there are maybe a few that we have unknown owners on, but not very many. Most of the properties that are in this area, we do know the owners. The ones that are unknown, that would be a question for our ADA Keith Loomis. So, but I'm assuming it's just going to go back to our last known information that we have on that.
And I apologize, your name for the record?
I'm sorry, Jana Seddon, Story County Assessor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Assemblyman Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Is this mic working? Oh. Good morning, and thank you so much for the presentation. My first question is, would this apply to all counties, and if so, what does that look like?
It would apply to all counties. The legislature made an attempt back in 2001 to address this problem through, it was being pushed by Nye County at the time. And at that time, we did adopt a statute 244-2825, which addresses a similar issue, but not quite the same as this one. And that would apply statewide. That particular law did not work. And this is based on anecdote. I talked to the Nye County, she's in charge of the lands down there, and said that, yes, they did push it, but they never utilized it because it was not going to be effective for what they wanted to do. And it was the similar issue, town sites that had never been patented. So this is going to apply statewide.
Thank you so much. Follow-up, Chair? And then is there any other situation in which this law would be used, or is it just this one scenario in Story County? Thank you.
Keith Loomis again. There are a number of town sites around the state that were not patented. And I'm pointing particularly at Nye County, which is the one that tried to get this done once before in 2001. But there are other town sites throughout the state that have similar issues. I don't know how many there are, but this is not specific to Story County, and I think that's why Washoe County wanted to have an amendment, because they could see some application there too.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to follow up on the Assemblywoman's question about the applicability in other counties. These changes would only then go into effect in those counties if there was a separate lands bill in those other counties that would then quitclaim the federal property to that respective county. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Vice Chair Duran.
And thank you. So on this partial for the transfer, how much is it going to cost? And then are the deeds already in their name, or do they have to go through the whole process once again to get those deeds out of the cloud? Is there a cost for that?
Right now, the proposal is that we're going to have one deed with a
And your
lot
name
of,
for the record, please?
Keith Loomis. We're going to have, we have an engineering company, a civil engineering company standing by that has the identities of all the known owners of property, and they will provide that to the county. We'll do a single deed, which will have all the names of the people on that deed, along with the assessor's parcel numbers, and record that deed. And we're not going to send out individual deeds to every individual. We're going to send the one deed that is recorded to everybody when we send the notification about how to do the disclaimer.
So for example, if that happens, so how do I get the deed to my own property if I want to sell it, or do I have a fee at that time? Or how do I get out of that one deed for my property?
You would, if you're going to sell the property, you get your own deed with your own legal description and assessor's parcel number and whatnot, and that would be conveyed to whoever you're going to sell it to. This is somewhat similar to the delinquent taxes, where we name all the delinquent taxpayers on a single deed, and we have all the assessor's parcel numbers on that deed and record that and send notice to the people. This is you're delinquent, we need to get the taxes paid. So it's going to be similar to that process. Do you want to add something?
Jana Seddon for the record. Basically, what will happen is if you want to sell your property, you're going to use your last deed that you did with a legal description on it. When your title company goes and does a search, they will see this other deed that will be there that basically will clear up any sort of ownership issues that we've had from this whole thing back to the 1900s. So when your title company goes and does your title search, they're going to see this and they're going to go, oh, here's this other deed. Great, now we've cleared title, there's not going to be any issues, but you're basically going to be using your last transfer deed if you were going to sell your property or do anything else to it, as far as transferring it to a trust, as far as splitting it, maps, doing any sort of thing.
Chairwoman Torres, may I? All right, thank you, Austin Osborne, for the record, Story County Manager. I also did confirm with the Story County Recorder's Office, as well as with our team, that what Mr. Loomis has explained in transferring this one deed over for recording, that property owners in Virginia City and Gold Hill will not receive any fees. They will not endure any type of fee. The county itself actually will not have to pay the $37 fee either, because it's a local government recording into itself. So we believe there'll be no fiscal impact to anybody on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just from a technical question in terms of the appraisal, I think I read in the language that this particular changes would skip the appraisal process. So how would the land value being determined for this massive one deed for each of the individual parcel?
Jana Seddon for the record. It would go based off of the assessed value, or actually taxable value of the property that we have listed in the assessor system.
Quick follow-up, Chair. So that means that the value is already in there before this deed is being given. Once this particular change is passed, that they don't need to go through an individual appraisal process to get their land value. I just want to clarify that.
That is correct, and I believe Mr. Loomis can speak further onto that.
I mean, the value of the land isn't really relevant to what we're trying to accomplish, because we just want to clear the titles. And we don't have to go through the appraisal process. We're not going to have a transfer tax, so we don't have to know the value of the property when it is transferred to determine what the transfer tax is, because we're not going to have a transfer tax.
Okay. I'm just wanting to make sure that we are clearing the process, that if we're skipping certain things, that
Right.
folks are still be able to get what they need. Just
Right.
want to clarify that on record. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
It's
Thank-
Keith Loomis, sorry.
Thank you. Assemblyman Gur.
Maybe I could simplify this a little bit since I've been in the business most of my life. It appears the federal government and the state government and the county governments never transferred the property properly, right? Then when I built my house or bought my house or whatever I did in Virginia City, everybody thought everything was fine. So you assessed it, you appraised it, we had a deed, we did everything right, right? So now that the county's figured it out and the feds, all we're going to do is make the transfer happen. Doesn't change anything on the record, except now I really do own my property. The feds don't have anything to do with it. Is that pretty much the intent?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? So I do have one question, especially because I did not know about NRS 2442825 because it's different than what's in the context of this bill. So I didn't have the opportunity to take a look at that, but I will after this meeting. And so I'm just trying to understand what's different about what we're going to be doing in this piece of legislation than what was done. I believe it was in Nye County, you mentioned?
That's right. Keith Loomis.
Thank you. So can you clarify what's different about what's being done in this piece of legislation than what was done historically with Nye counties?
Yeah, to my knowledge, Nye County never followed through on 2825. There is a requirement that they meet a lot more.
And can you state your name for the record?
Keith Loomis, yes. There's a lot more requirements as to what a person has to establish in order to get a transfer of land from the county under that bill than there is under this bill. There are some requirements that in certain circumstances that they'll have to pay for their land. And in talking to Lorinda Walkman, she's in charge of lands down in Nye County, she explained that they had looked around and some people had been on their land for like 2 generations and they just couldn't justify charging them to buy the property for a second time. This doesn't have that requirement. They have a requirement in 2825 that says that you can't get the land unless your property taxes are current. Well, they have a kind of a different way of handling property taxes down in Nye County than we do in Story County. And so we don't have a requirement in here that the people that are going to be the beneficiaries of the deed that we record have to have their property taxes current. There's some other differences. But those, I think, are the major ones.
Okay, and as is right now, would we be able to apply that NRS 2442825 to Story County?
We could.
And your name for the record, please.
Keith Loomis.
And then I guess I do have then concerns and like larger questions because then we're keeping other pieces of legislation, other pieces of the NRS and statute that you're saying are ineffective and don't allow for us to resolve this issue. I do also have, obviously I don't know what's going to happen in the future with quit claiming of federal lands. And so I would be eager to see like some type of sunset provision so that the legislature can look at this after it's done and say like, this worked, this was effective, whereas 2825 we're saying was not effective. Nye County wasn't able to, it didn't work for them, they didn't use it. And rather than keeping pieces of the statute in place that are ineffective and inefficient, because now we're just adding to it where there's clearly some part of the NRS right now that doesn't make sense for local government. So it might make sense for us to strike that language and then have this language, but then also sunset it so that we're having this conversation again with the legislature.
PK O'Neill, Assembly District 40. Chair, I would be in agreement with you. How much I'm not on that side, so I can't ask a question, but I would suggest ask the question, how long will it take to do this work, Story County, to do the quitclaiming deed? And we could work that into the sunset.
That was Assemblyman O'Neill for the record. I would like to ask the Assemblyman's question. How long will that take?
Jana Seddon, Story County Assessor for the record. Since this is being done as one deed, the recordation won't take that long. Probably maybe 4 days to get updated information with our GIS company that they already have everything ready to go. We've already like pulled all the information, but what we'll do is we will pull the information, the current information in this area. The recorder's office will not record for a couple of days until we get this, because what we don't want is a new deed to come through and then have the incorrect owners on this other deed. So we will halt recording of new documents in this area for about 2 days. Then we will record this document. Then the others will go through. Now, where the time consuming is going to be is actually getting this in our assessor data. It's probably going to take a couple of weeks to get this all input into our assessor data. But it really shouldn't, if we don't have any issues going through, it really shouldn't take that long to get this done.
Chair Torres, Austin Osborne, Story County Manager for the record. Putting a sunset on this, if this committee has an idea about how long that would be, or if that works with our assessor's office in that time frame, or a 1 or 2 year period of time, we believe that Story County would be just fine with that, and then we could revisit this item in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions or comments?
Madam Chair, one other major difference between Keith Loomis.
And thank you.
One other major difference between this bill and 2825 is the fact that the acceptance versus disclaimer process is reversed.
Members, any additional questions? Assemblyman DeLong.
As it relates to Nye County, you may or may not know this, did Nye County ever get a lands bill that then could implement that other statute?
Keith Loomis, there is a provision in 2825 that says if the federal government gives them the property, they have to go through it. Now, whether the federal government ever did that or not, I don't know.
Because my understanding is Nye County hasn't had a lands bill like this, so
Okay.
I don't know that that statute's ever been implemented then in Nye County.
Someone, well, I was going to say my name for the record is someone Torres. I'm really into it now. And I guess for the conversation too, I do think if it's never been used, I just don't want to have two options for counties too, where this is option A or option B, choose your poison. You can do either one. So I definitely think, we can continue to have a conversation with local governments and find which one of these solutions makes most sense. And it looks like there's a piece of legislation before us that makes sense for multiple counties. So I'm definitely eager to continue this conversation. At this time, I don't see any additional questions from members. Solomon MacArthur, you weren't going to grill your good friend? Not at this. He's saving it for later. All right, at this time, we'll go ahead and invite anyone wishing to testify in support of AB 143.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, spelled C-A-D-E-N-C-E-M-A-T-I-J-E-V-I-C-H, representing Washoe County. And I am here with the aforementioned friendly amendment. The amendment would strike the bill section 6, which is on page 9, beginning at line 17, simply strikes that the act is effective upon passage and approval. My understanding of that action would be that the bill would then be effective on October 1st. Perhaps your staff could confirm that first rather than 31st of October. And we appreciate the bill sponsor and Story County considering that because this bill has statewide applicability, it may have applicability in Washoe County. We're not aware currently of any parcels, but we are doing some checking as a county that was established in 1861. We have a little wild, wild west in us too, and so appreciate the extra time. Thank you.
Chair Torres and the committee, for the record, my name is Clay Mitchell, C-L-A-Y-M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L. I'm a Story County Commissioner. I have the pleasure of living in and representing Virginia City. My family also owns a few parcels in Gold Hill. Living in Virginia City is unique in many ways. In fact, we just had our first big event of the year, which was a Rocky Mountain Oyster Festival, and it was snowing, and we still had a good time. I'm not going to make the pun. I just want to confirm a couple of things that have been said as a resident. And the first one is that there are very few options available for title insurance. We are lucky if even one company will cover a transaction with title insurance, due in large part to the ambiguity that arises from this particular situation. And it is fairly common for residents to have trouble acquiring financing as a result. A lot of more conservative financial institutions just don't want to touch it if there's any question about the state of the title. I feel strongly that this bill would also help us with preservation of historic structures. The entire community is part of a National Historic Landmark and is subject to the Comstock Historic District. That adds another layer of complexity when it comes to preserving and restoring these buildings. And so when you add on top of that any ambiguity about clarity on title, it makes it more difficult. This would also help economic development, which is also a challenge. Anything that makes it even more unique makes the option. It takes away options as far as people trying to improve their property in this area. So I strongly encourage consideration of this bill. We're thankful for the diligence of our neighbors to the west in looking through how this might affect them as well, and we're happy to take their amendment as well. Thank you.
Will Adler, for the record, representing Silver State Government Relations and representing Story County. I just want to thank Assemblyman O'Neill for bringing this bill forward. It is a unique bill and sort of a niche one that's related to the long-term history of Virginia City and sort of the lack of paperwork and the can-do spirit of the West, that they sort of started a town without telling the federal government, and we do need to clean up that paperwork. But this has been years in the works and a long-term process that the county has led, and I want to applaud them for this, and hopefully this bill will clean up a lot of their local titling issues. Thank you for supporting it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, for the record, Mary Walker, representing Douglas County, Lyon County, and Story County. Even though we don't believe this bill affects Lyon County and Douglas County, we do support them because we know they've tried to fix this for about 20 years. So we support our neighbor and rural community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in support of AB 143 in Carson City? Seeing none, I'll open it up to Las Vegas. I don't see any in Las Vegas. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support of AB 143?
There are no callers choosing to testify at this time.
Thank you. We have someone new on the BPS line today. At this time, I'll invite anyone wishing to testify in opposition to AB 143. Seeing none in Carson City, none in Las Vegas. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to AB 143? BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to AB 143?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition to AB 143 at this time.
Thank you. I will invite anyone wishing to testify neutral to AB 143 here in Carson City or in Las Vegas. BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify neutral to AB 143?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral to AB 143 at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'll go ahead and invite the bill sponsor for any closing remarks.
Assemblyman P.K. O'Neill, Assembly District 40. Thank you, Chair. I didn't know this bill would be so exciting to get such interest from people. I just want to say in closing, basically it's been 2 decades of work has been devoted to helping the families and small businesses get clear title on their land that they really owned there on the Comstock Lode. AB 143 will close that and allow them to have clear title to deal with their property as everyone else does across the state. And in discussion on the sunset offer, I would offer this as a friendly amendment with your concurrence, Chair, that we sunset it on June 30th of 2024. So it gives it 1 year really to be enacted, utilized, and then is brought to closure. It would give it enough time also for the next legislature if they want to continue it forward to study, see the results, and deal with it then in the next term. So with that, I just want to thank you, Chair, and all committee members for listening to this most exciting bill, particularly to Assemblyman MacArthur for his studious review of it.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And, I spoke with Assemblyman MacArthur in the morning, and he told me he was up all night just reading through this legislation. So I'm very happy he was able to come prepared today. Thank you, Assemblyman. I look forward to continuing the conversation. At this time, we'll close the hearing on AB 143, and we will go ahead and open the public comment portion of this meeting. Each person has 2 minutes to provide testimony. Public comment may be submitted in writing to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. Is there anyone in person wishing to testify in public comment? Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in public comment? BPS, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in public comment?
Chair, there are no callers on the line choosing to testify for public comment.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments from members before we adjourn? Assemblyman MacArthur, I think you had some remarks. All right. And tomorrow we will be meeting in room 3143. The hardest working committee will be meeting at 8 a.m. So as a reminder to committee members, we'll be meeting at 8 a.m. in 3143. We will have a bill hearing, AB 219, and then that will be followed by a work session where we will have about 7 bills. We might be adding... We'll be adding AB 113 as well, just so members are aware. There will be an amendment, and we'll make sure that that goes around. And actually, I will ask the sponsor of that bill if she could just send it to committee members as well. That would be appreciated. Since there's no other additional remarks from members, we will adjourn.